All right. Good afternoon. It is 4 o'clock. A quorum is present. So the July 21st meeting of the Board of Health is now open. Just to remind everyone that this meeting is being audio and visually recorded. Just comments, any objections to the agenda from the board? Hearing no objections, the agenda is approved. Are there any comments from the public on any issue that are not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. It's a time of year where we have to appoint a chair and a new vice chair. I mean, we don't have to, but it's nice to do it every year. And since we just went through a transition again. So the nominations are open for the chair position.
I nominate Malcolm McNabb to be chair.
I would nominate Steve Vesco as chair. But I've done this a while. There's no one seconding it.
I'd like to keep it the same for this next year if you'd like to stay on.
Then whatever happens, I will remove myself next year. So
if you do that in advance, then we're prepped, Mr. Chairman.
Then you're prepped.
You got us all by surprise.
No.
So do I hear a second?
I
did.
I just...
I don't know if we need a second. I think a nomination is a nomination, and then you have a vote for all the nominees.
Fine.
At the moment, we have one, right?
Well, one is refused, so we have one.
We have one.
A polite declination.
But we have to... We've been together a long time, and I think we've worked well. And one of the issues, whenever the talk about term limits comes up, is keeping the expertise going. And this is, I think we've all learned a great deal over the last few years about the complexity of these regulations. But I think at some point we should think about a new chair, and maybe someone should pass their spot on to someone else. So I think we should in the next year start thinking about that. All right, so all in favor that I continue as chair, say aye.
Aye.
I will abstain, and therefore I am the chair. Nominations for vice chair. I would nominate Steve Vesco.
I second that.
Any additional nominations?
Kind of like an apprentice term.
Yes, I think that's what we're going to do. So all in favor of Steve as vice chair?
Aye.
It's carried unanimously. So I will continue as chair. Steve will be vice chair with the idea that he will succeed me next year. How does that sound?
Good.
Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Providing, whatever happens. Okay, minutes from June 16th. Those were distributed. Any comments, additions, objections from anyone on the board? No. Hearing none, those are approved by unanimous consent. The next item is surrogate sampling point for Cliffside Beach Club. Roberta, would you explain what this means?
Yes, so the beaches in the island have to all be tested. They all have to have water tests every Tuesday, and we currently do a testing at the town beach access number 40, which is directly adjacent to the Cliffside Beach Club. So they're asking that we can use that sample as a surrogate, mainly because there's no reason in taking a redundant sample 20 feet apart from a location on the island that's constantly flushed. So they just need approval from the board to accept that as a surrogate.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
It seems to me like a duplicate effort and
It
a
is a
waste of
duplicate
people's
effort.
time.
Mm-hmm. It is a duplicate.
Any other questions from the board? Comments? I'd like a motion then to approve that we can use the surrogates. You're going to do the sampling. They're going to do the sampling.
We do the sampling anyway. We always
so
do the
they
sampling.
can use that as their sampling.
So they can use
All right,
the
I
result
got
as
you.
their sample.
So I need a motion that the Surfside Beach Club can use the Board of Health's results as their sample.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Any, any further discussion, comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye, and so they will use your results.
Okay.
That sounds like a good idea. Next is carryover from the last meeting, and that was a variance from Ms. Weinman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the record, Rhoda Weinman. I'm before you today to ask you to continue my request for a variance until the September meeting. The reason being that I watched the video actually twice from the last meeting, and it occurred to me as I listened to all the comments that it seemed to be the biggest issue was precedent setting, and that you were concerned that if you approved a variance for me, even though I believe my circumstances are unique, that many others would come in. So I would ask you to continue it. I did just check with Ann an hour ago to see if there were any other people that had called or actually come in to ask for a variance request as a result of the letter that went out a month ago. And she said, to the best of her knowledge, and I stand to be corrected, Roberto, if I'm wrong, she said that there weren't any. And that letter went out a month ago. Your first letter went out in October, and I believe you heard at the last meeting that not one person responded to that. I was the only one. So I also reviewed, you had asked at the last meeting to ask the Board of Health Department to send you information on the 24 people that received letters. You asked to see the size of the lots and also the separation and, you know, what they failed by. And of the 24 people that got letters, there were only 2 on that list that have more square footage than I have. As you may recall, I have enough square footage for 36 bedrooms. We have 1 bedroom that's used on 9 acres. And most of the people on that list had less than a 5-foot separation, which is what I'm asking for. And for me, the key is in all of this also, which you have no way of knowing based on what you got for information, is you don't know how many people live in these houses. You could have people that, particularly in summer houses, with 7, 8, 10 people, you know, using those houses. And there's no way of you knowing that until somebody comes before you and represents that there aren't 7 or 8 people living in those houses. And I'm representing to you that there are 2 people living in our house. So I think if you were agree to continue this until September, I think there's another, I think somebody said at the last meeting that another letter was going to go out, so that'll be the 3rd letter that's going out. And people just don't seem to be responding to that at all. And again, I'd like to remind you, I'm not asking for a waiver from this requirement. I'm asking just to have it deferred until such time as we put our property on the market. And when we put our property on the market, we're certainly going to comply and put in the system. So I would ask that that you please continue it till September so that the board has a better sense of our people coming in and asking for variances and what the circumstances are. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the board?
Not so much of Rhoda, but maybe for Roberto, just is there a time frame for a variance request so they could come in and ask for a variance in 3 years if they've delayed that long for whatever reason?
A variance can be requested at any time, but the deadline for the regulation that we have is September 1st. Starting September 1st, everyone who hasn't put in the new IA system is officially out of compliance. So we will start enforcement at that point. Exactly.
So
they're subject to penalties at that
might
point.
get their attention, or we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure. This is halfway through November. What's another 6 weeks going to show us?
Yeah.
That's
Well, I
my
think-
concern.
I would think that if anybody's concerned about it, or if anybody is inclined to ask for a variance, they're going to ask for it by the September 1st deadline. And now you've had 2 letters that have gone out, and people aren't responding. So, you know, and I think my situation is unique, 36 bedrooms versus 1. So I would ask you to please consider at least extending it until September so you can feel more comfortable that you're not going to be inundated with variance requests.
Of course, as I mentioned before, all those 30-some people will all come here eventually and tell me that they have some special reason. I mean, you have one, but people can be very creative and always find
Well,
a
I
special
understand that, but
reason.
if you looked at your list that you requested, nobody has the amount of acreage other than those two people, and most of the separations are less than 5 feet. So, I mean, I'm only asking what, I understand that the requirements here are different than the state, but I'm only asking what the state requirements are, and I'm only asking for deferral and not a waiver. And I think that's important.
What if we gave you a deferral with the condition that you drilled an observational hole to just see, in fact, if you were still out of compliance?
I guess I'd have to respond to that in September. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know whether we are or not. So, but I think the bottom line is that even if we were, and I don't know whether we are or not, but even if we were, the circumstances are still pretty unique to have one bedroom in use when we've got 9 acres. And that's, I think the usage in that property is not contributing to the problem. The problem is with summer people that are 8 and 9 and 10 people living in a house.
But if we start going that way, the regulation will get very confusing. I mean, then the regulation only applies to people with more than 2 people living in a house. And, I mean, we could get mired in an endless quagmire here of starting to count people.
No, I understand that, but I think that my understanding, and, I've been doing this for a long time and before town boards, and my understanding of appearing before a town board and looking for a variance is that each circumstance is looked at individually, and that you don't deny someone because you think it's going to open the floodgates. And I understand your concern, and I respect that, but I think that you'll have a much better sense of that after September, because if people aren't responding, then they're not going to respond. And I think that's what I would ask you to look at.
But if you did an observational hole, you could find that you're not a technical failure, and you could go away and we'll never see you again.
Okay.
Any comments from the board? Comments from the staff?
My only comment is that the situation as it stands now is very simple. The system has failed.
Yeah, and that's what the regulation is about.
And that's why,
It's been failed for 7 years, am I correct?
It's just technical failure. The system is working.
It's a technical failure.
Yeah.
It's been less than a year.
So I got the sense of the board is, right now, I think it's been expressed well. The system is a technical failure, and that's what the regulation says. Now, if you were willing to do an observational hole and come back to it, we could delay this until September if you're doing that. If not, then we'll just take a vote. Okay?
I'll do the whole.
All right, so may I have a motion either to approve or not approve this variance?
Well, I guess we have to, I'll make a motion to deny. And we'll
That's what I mean.
See where we go.
Okay. Second, any further comment?
I don't understand the motion. You're making
The motion present is to deny your variance.
I thought, well, that's not what what I was asking for at this meeting, is to continue it until September, and you just asked me if I would agree to do the observation hole, and I said yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
you
I
said yes?
I'm sorry, I
No, I didn't.
misunderstood. I
No,
thought
I said yes.
I think we didn't hear that
we
clearly.
didn't hear that
I think
clearly.
Roberto heard it because he shook his head.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I heard yes.
I'm sorry. Maybe I need some something electronic in my ear. All right. So, in that case, do I hear a motion that we would delay a decision on this request until September, pending the results of an observational hole?
Sure. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Do I hear a second? Any further discussion? Then the motion before the board is that we will delay a decision on your variance until September, pending the results of an observational hole.
before you vote, I just have one question for the board. I assume if we give Rhoda this opportunity to do that, we will carry that over to the next 24 people as they come in here one at a time?
It would depend upon, she gave us the answer. It depends on the individual situation.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay?
all right.
So, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
The chairman votes aye. So, we will delay this until September, pending the results of your observational hole.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yes, it was.
Thank you for the clarification.
Variance for
34.
34 Brewster Road.
It's also a carry. It is also a carry. Sorry. It's also the carryover from last month's meeting.
Yes, I remember that.
Mr. Swain was here requesting the variance to put the 5 bedrooms on the 40,000 square feet, but they are now asking to do that with an IA.
Okay, so I can't find my notes on that. What was this? The variance is for, that's right.
5 bedrooms on 40,000 square
And
with an IA.
we considered we would accept that if we had an IA system.
Yep, and his clients agreed.
Correct. For the record, Brian Swain, attorney for the applicant. My client's good with installing a 5-bedroom IA system.
Any further questions, comments?
Just to remind us, this is one of those lots which we expect to have sewered within the next couple of years.
Correct. Yeah,
Yes.
this is a temporary conditional variance based on once sewer is available for him to connect to, he'll abandon the system properly and connect to the sewer system.
Right.
It's helpful just to restate that.
Right.
Thank you.
So we need a motion to accept the variance on the condition that they put in an IA system.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any further comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye.
Great. Thank you.
Put in your IA
You
system
got it. Take care.
and wait for the sewer.
Okay.
Now we have
137 Hummock.
137 Hummock.
So we received a variance request for 137 Hummock Pond Road. This was a permit that was issued for a 12-bedroom septic system giving bedroom credits. It is a 2-acre lot, which typically would only be allowed to have 8 bedrooms on the lot. This permit was issued how long ago? A year ago? Okay. So, and then with the permit extension, with Permit Extension Act, it's still valid. They will be putting an IA. It was given with a bedroom credit, but with the new regulation for Hummock Pond, we normally wouldn't give that bedroom credit. We believe that the permit was issued in error, as that should have been limited to 8 bedrooms. So it is here to the board. They are appealing that. We believe that it should be down to 8 bedrooms. They're asking for the 12 bedrooms. And unfortunately,
Is there
Mr.
here someone to
Gasparo's,
speak?
Mr. Gasparo's not here today, I guess.
And this is similar, remember, to 9 North
Very-
Road?
Very similar
Where we
to
had a
9
permit,
North.
we went through this, and we kind of came to a middle ground of bedrooms.
Mhm. I believe with 9 North, they were requesting 10 bedrooms, and the split was to give them 8. So I believe they received 8.
Remember the size of that? Was that also like 2 acres or thereabouts?
It
Or
was-
less?
60,000.
60
Yeah.
acre and
Yes.
a half or something?
Mhm.
It's a similar situation where we had a permit and the rules
Exactly.
and blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. And I believe this is one of the very last ones that
hope
we're going
it's
to be
one-
dealing with.
I hope, please. I hope it's one of the last.
Just an observation to make sure I get, I guess I was always under the impression that the bedroom credits or whatever that phrase is was like 1 extra. I mean, they're giving 12
It's
was.
2 with an acre.
Mm-hmm.
Two, was
Normally.
it 2 with an acre? So if
Yeah.
normally you'd have 4, you could have 6?
6, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the regs say 8, and they want 12
Correct.
with an I system.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, please.
There's Mr. Gasparo now.
I would just keep on walking. We're about to talk about you.
Sorry, I wish I didn't get trapped outside. Sorry for a few minutes tardy. Art Gasparo on behalf of the applicant. The request is for the variance to allow essentially the loading rate using an IA system that's permitted by Title V. And I think the difference from the some of the ones in the harbor watershed is that you wouldn't otherwise get an IA system in the Hummock watershed district because it's not required the same way it is in the Nantucket Harbor watershed district. So by using an IA system here, you're actually going to get a decrease in the overall nitrogen loading from a larger system In other words, from a 12-bedroom system that takes out 50% of the nitrogen loading is going to be less than an 8-bedroom system that's conventional that has 100%. So though it's a larger system, it's going to have less nitrogen than the smaller conventional system.
Questions from the board? Comments?
It all gets confusing. Nantucket, Hummock, Nantucket. Nantucket regs were a little bit different, and I don't know if those, just because it didn't carry over into Hummock with the same Zone B, or is Regulation 64 the same, reads the same whether you're in Nantucket, Hummock, or Nantucket.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, you get one bedroom for every 10,000 because under Regulation 50 definition, Hummock Pond watershed is considered a nitrogen-sensitive area. So it should have been held. It was an oversight at the time. I don't think we had we didn't have the ability to issue it. That's why it's in front of you now.
So absent the so-called grandfathering here, a new applicant would get 8 with an IA system. Just to be clear.
Well, he could do it conventionally.
If I may, I might help to clarify the one difference that exists between while the 64 applies across all of the nitrogen-sensitive areas. The difference is in Nantucket, there's an additional regulation that says basically all systems shall be IA. So in Hummock, without that, no one's going to put in voluntarily an 8-bedroom IA, right? It would be conventional. So I could see where this doesn't really make sense, or why the board may act differently on a new application for somebody in Nantucket, because you're going to get the IA anyway. And the other districts, if they're willing to go at least in such a manner that it doesn't, that the math still works, essentially, that the amount of bedrooms is less than what you would, the nitrogen loading is less by using IA than what you would have conventional, it would seem that that's further to the interests that the board is trying to protect, if that's clear. And I'm happy to try to, but I think that's the key difference, is that the Nantucket district requires IA no matter what, whereas these districts don't. So you're not going to get IA the way you used to. People would do them basically for that bonus.
So that's something for the board to consider in the future, I guess, and to make sure we're comfortable with that distinction you're drawing.
Yeah, I mean,
that's our regulation, so.
We need to think about this in the regs.
Well, I mean, I don't have a problem with it, because you're getting loading of 6 bedrooms, even though it's 12, where you could put a conventional in of 8 and not be an IA.
Yeah, it is, unless he agreed to do 10 with an IA,
Yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
that, kind of a between position,
Which
which
we
is sort
did-
of what we tried to do.
Which we tried to do on North.
No, yeah.
That keeps us consistent. Or
If I
even
may,
10.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree in Nantucket, but I think it's different in the area that you wouldn't otherwise get the IA. You were going to get the IA on North Road no matter what.
You're right.
Here you wouldn't get it.
You're right.
And granted, maybe that's something to consider if applicants want to come in, especially moving forward, or that you amend the regulations that sort of address, because you have the 1 per 10. But in this case, they do have a duly issued permit for the 12 and have been planning for a year or two, or even maybe a little bit more, based on that.
And the IA should cover.
And the IA,
Should cover it.
the mass loading, the balance
Right.
works to your favor.
No, I mean, I understand that. I think partly if we proceed, it's because the permit was issued, and rightly or wrongly, if you will. I mean, if that was the way things were done at that time, it was
Which
consistent.
I believe is one of the standards for a variance that is what we've
Yes,
you
yes,
know
yes.
laid out exactly.
Any other comments or questions? All right. You make a very good argument. I'm still a bit uncomfortable with it, and I think we need to go back and look at the regulations to see if, because we're kind of caught in a interesting situation here.
Yeah, and is it that, I mean, Hummock Pond has different characteristics than the harbor, so our efforts to reduce nitrogen in one may have a little different impact on the
Than the others,
regulations,
yeah.
you know, because it has what's under the water is different, and we got to
Right.
think that through. So,
All right, so I need a motion to accept or deny this variance request.
I'd like the motion to accept as is.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of acceptance of the variance as is, say aye.
Aye.
The chairman will vote no, just
Thanks.
for consistency.
Thank you for your time.
So the variance is accepted.
so we might want to schedule a further discussion of this because there. I mean, you got Nantucket, you've got Hummock, you've got
Yeah.
and you know we're going to have Maya Comet in some way. We got all these different areas. You've got Quidnet with Sacajah Pond, and so we need to think through what our objectives are with the regulations. Okay.
I would suggest that we probably schedule a workshop for this.
Yeah, why don't you schedule a work in,
And we'll go through the logic models, Gantt charts, whole
scheduled
9
for
yards.
September? Or,
September? Okay.
I mean, we're all busy in August. When the restaurants stop closing down and you don't have to do all these inspections, right? Sometime in September.
Okay. I'll set it up for the September meeting.
Yeah, because it's it was a very interesting discussion. Okay, next we have 51 Tennessee.
Yes.
Release of well setback.
Yes, this is
Anyone to speak on that, or Roberto, you're going to explain this to us?
Would you like to explain this one? Yeah. Art's been working with this more than I have on this one.
They're in for a local upgrade approval in septic and well, and the well is within the 150 but over 50, so they need a variance from you. It's maximum feasible compliance. They've, doing the best they can for the separation of Nantucket, but it's just something they couldn't do under local upgrade approval because it was local regulations. So it's in front of you for that approval.
Just for that.
You guys have no problem with this
We haven't had a
from
problem.
the staff?
No.
Any questions?
Just for information, what are they doing on the septic you mentioned? It's not, perhaps not germane to this, but I'm just curious on that. If you don't know, Art, that's
Yeah.
fine. I'll just.
Yeah, I believe this one is just a repair. Yeah, here it is. Reduction is for the replacement of a new leach bed and to replace the septic system that failed. So it's on a repair.
Okay. Any other comments? Do we hear a motion to accept or deny the variance?
So moved.
Motion to accept, yeah.
Second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor of granting the variance? Aye.
Aye.
So just,
Chairman votes aye.
could I just go back to replace the septic? So I assume what that means is if it was a regular Title V system, it's being replaced with a regular Title V system?
Yes, because we're right now, I believe they're already part of the ACO, Art. I believe so. Yeah, I believe they're already part of the ACO, so
Okay.
they would have to
Just-
replace it
just-
with a basic Title V
Yeah.
in order to connect to sewer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have an ACO, 74 Arkansas, and Roberto explained to me before there's a betterment loan and an ACO,
Yes.
so you
So
better
this one
take
is
this slow
a
for us.
this one is a unique situation. 74 Arkansas had a betterment loan issued to them recently. I believe Grady Consultants is here. Had a betterment loan issued to them recently to repair a septic system, and they have since taken out approximately, I believe it's $8,000 to do some of the work. But since that time, they have decided to sell the property So there is a prospective buyer who is looking to purchase the property as long as the ACO is active. Our hands are kind of tied in that we're not allowed to issue an ACO if there is the betterment lien on the property. So what the attorneys and the consultants are asking is that we provide a conditional approval of the ACO as long as the betterment loan gets paid first, betterment lien. And I believe the consultants are here to answer
Yes,
more
please.
questions.
Yes, that is correct, just as he stated. I'm Paul Seabrook from Grady Consulting, representing Michelle Baker, the property owner. Due to her failed system, she wishes to enter into the ACO program and also do a Band-Aid repair to her existing septic system temporarily until sewer becomes available. Can answer any questions you may have.
Questions? So the point is the betterment loan needs to be paid off before we would conditionally grant an ACO, which sounds reasonable. Comments?
So that's really all we're doing here.
Yes.
That's all we're doing here. We're
Yeah,
giving,
we're giving the conditional approval.
approval. The conditional approval is on condition that the betterment loan is paid off.
Mhm.
And that seems to be what the lawyers and the homeowners and the staff seem to be comfortable with.
Yes.
Okay, do I need a motion to grant a conditional ACO on the condition that the betterment loan on the property is paid off?
So moved.
Move second. Any further discussion? I need a vote that we will grant a conditional ACO on the condition that the betterment loan is paid off for 74 Arkansas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. We have a conditional approval based on the conditions stated. ACO 7029 South Cambridge, technical failure.
Yes, so with the ACO for 29 South Cambridge Street, there is a technical failure on the property. Somebody is purchasing this property, but in order to do so, they're looking to get the ACO. The system is working. It is just in technical failure. Basic ACO.
Okay.
It's a shared system.
Anyone to speak on it? I see no one. Questions from the comments?
Just a question. So they, in effect, delayed making a commitment to the ACO, it sounds like. I mean, wouldn't they have normally done that earlier or not?
It's
just because of the transfer?
The property had been foreclosed on, so it had laid vacant for a significant amount of time.
Okay.
It's a shared system between 5 condo units. I believe 2 of them have already entered the ACO, while 1 of them have said, we're going to escrow our own money, but yes, we'll connect to the sewer. This one was laid
So
vacant.
there are 5 units on the one system?
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve the ACO for 29 South Cambridge.
Sure, so moved.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor of a betterment, ACO, for 29 Cambridge, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. ACO is approved for 29 South Cambridge. Now we have a betterment loan request for 14 Hawthorne.
I would suggest that we take those
It's a hydraulic failure.
both 12 and 13 together. They're both betterment loans. They're both hydraulic failures. It's straightforward. They need the money to do the repairs.
And the second one is
It's 3 Salrose Road.
Salros. Questions for Richard, or for Roberto? I'm sorry. Not only do I hearing aid, I need a new head.
I'll
So-
recuse myself on the salaries.
Sawross Road has town sewer.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, but this one is for connection. This one is
Oh,
for
for
connection.
Let's take them separate.
Yeah, then we'll have to take
Since
them
they're a little
separately
different,
because they're
then
slightly
and
different.
we have somebody not
Yeah.
participating. So let's start with
Hawthorne.
14
Hawthorne
Hawthorne.
first.
This-
Questions about Hawthorne, further discussion. That's a pretty straightforward
Straightforward.
one. I need a motion to approve the betterment loan.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the betterment loan for 14 Hawthorne, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye.
Okay.
Now,
Recusal.
Salos is different. So why don't you
Yes.
explain that one to us?
Uh,
And we have one
Recusal. 3 Salros, they have a hydraulically failed system. It is very failed. It requires constant pump out. They're looking for the betterment loan to connect to the sewer.
So it does raise the issue, why weren't they connected before, or what were the options here?
Well, it's a private, my daughter lives on that street, it's a private road, and the people got together, put the sewer in, and apparently they all didn't tie into it.
So was the sewer ever dedicated to the town?
Yes.
Then she has to, then, I thought.
Then
I'm confused.
Theoretically, there should have been picked up by the last go-round. We may have missed some.
Yes, now
Is
that
that
the
what happened here?
Yep. Now that the system we have them on our list as a hydraulic failure. They have to connect.
So this is to connect to the sewer?
Yes, they're asking for a betterment to connect to the sewer.
But it's fine that we're doing it now, but all I mean is that, as I recall, we were trying to get everybody who was in that situation, i.e. the sewer went in front of them to ask them to hook up a year ago, and they had 6 months or something to hook in. So I'm just assuming we just missed this one.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we need a motion for the betterment loan for Salros, 3 Salros, for sewer hookup.
Sure, so moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the betterment loan for 3 Salros, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman says aye. So that's 4 votes, 1 out. Holding tank for construction trailer at 9 Kimball.
Yes. So there is going to be a construction trailer at 9 Kimball during this 2-year construction project. They're requesting to have a 1,000-gallon black water tank with regular pump outs in lieu of doing a tight tank or a fully compliant system for the duration of the construction. Will be just a black water tank, not anything Title V compliant.
And how long is the construction?
2 years,
2 years.
according to the request.
Is there a difference in cost?
The difference in cost should be negligible for the type of work that they're going to be doing. One, they still have to bring a 1,000-gallon tank here. They still have to connect
Right.
it. The difference between the Title V compliant tight tank versus a holding tank is that the tight tanks have certain specifications, alarms, electronics, things
Blah,
like
blah,
that.
blah. So is there anyone here to speak about this? Because I don't understand why they want this.
I mean, what happens with these Scott's office trailers, they send them down. One part of them has a nice, bathroom in it, but they don't, in Nantucket, they don't have anybody that, they tell somebody else to get somebody for a tank. They don't supply a tank with them. So they basically want to just stick a tank in the ground, have it serviced, and then it will be removed.
Yeah, but
So that they can use that bathroom in the trailer.
Almost like a porta potty, but it's in the.
it's
Right.
a fancy
It's not a
it's a
porta-potty.
fancy
It's a-
porta
it's
potty.
a
Porta
very-
potty there for the workers, but
Yeah.
not for the people in the office trailer that are, there every
So there'd be
day.
a porta potty also.
There is there.
It would be,
But-
that'd
but
be a
there's-
traditionally.
yes.
But there's no alarms or anything on this.
Yeah, no, they're just suggesting regular pump outs.
They're responsible for the pumping out?
I'm sorry?
They're solely responsible?
Yeah,
Doing it
they're
on a regular basis?
yeah they specifically said in their request here that they will be providing regular pump outs. We received a letter from Mark Willett from Nantucket Septic.
And the pitch sort of is, it's short term.
It's a
got
2-year at the
defined
most.
Period of
There are
time.
comments from the staff. I'm kind of like this on it,
It's
I would
Odd.
just say Title V provides a standard for putting in a tight tank to take human waste. And, this is temporary, but it is a standard for installation and permitting. I don't know why would we go less than that based on, on what? Are they, there's no standard for less that I'm aware of.
right? No one's given me a convincing argument why we shouldn't put in a tight tank. There's no one to speak on that.
Yeah, like it's 25 times as much money or something.
Yeah, I haven't heard that. So, any other comments?
Is the tank going to be buried?
to my knowledge, yes. It's
It's vented and
It-
the whole?
it looks like a tight tank, smells like a tight tank, but it's not really a tight tank. It doesn't have the other standards that the state requires.
So porta potty is like a tight tank for 24 hours.
Right.
In effect.
That's
Okay.
actually a
tight
very
tank
good way
for
to say
2
it.
years, and then there's a tight tank
Have we ever
forever.
done this before?
No, I don't think so. I'm uncomfortable granting this variance because I haven't, no one's told me a good reason to yet. I don't know the sense of the rest of the board.
No, I agree.
You sort of assume it's financial, but you don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
If it was important to the people, they would have
Well,
been
I
here.
think it's more than it's the scope of the job and, you know, maybe providing the people that are in that office and the people that come from off island, the designers, the architects, rather than using the porta potty that the job guys use, that they could use the bathroom in the trailer.
More of a convenience.
You know, they just don't have a self-contained,
Right.
a self-contained unit that's in like a motorhome that's has a
And-
gate valve and then I would hook up to and hook up. They just sent the trailer down and it has the bathroom without the
So
self-contained.
you're trying to figure out how to use
Yeah.
it.
I mean, the only thing that I would suggest if you were uncomfortable with this was, and I don't understand why they, I think they're just outside the sewer district there, but this place is going to have this is on Kimball Ave, just off Sherburne Turnpike, it's going to have a huge septic system there. You could say, why don't you just put the septic tank in the ground that's going
Right, it's
there,
gonna
that's
have
going in now.
That's
that's got to
interesting.
go in anyways, and tie to that temporarily,
Right.
which it's already.
Which is another way to
That's a
respond
good
to
point.
Art's comment, then it's compliant, so to speak.
So if they put a septic system in there, would it have to be the size that is designated for the property,
Sure.
for the building?
Yeah, it's already been filed and approved and everything, the system.
Well,
Yeah.
well, if I hear no objection from the board, maybe you should go back and tell them that that's
put the septic in
just
right
put the
now.
septic in right now and save
Okay.
all the aggravation and save us all this discussion.
Sounds good.
How's that sound? Board comfortable with
Sounds
that?
good.
I am,
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah, and if they have some valid reason to come back, they'll be
Right.
back.
Right.
So
Sounds good.
we essentially have left the variance open.
We can table the variance.
We'll table the variance till next time, and if they don't like that, then we'll vote on the variance.
Okay. We'll table
How's
it
that
to August's meeting.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would request that we can move number 17 up to next. Ms. Janina Keene, she has come in
Yeah, that's fine.
earlier than expected. So
That's fine.
Mhm.
I have no problem with that. If the board has no objection to that.
Nope.
Okay.
all right, you're good to go.
Why don't you just
So,
introduce? And
I would like to
give us
introduce Ms.,
reasons and so forth.
I'd like to introduce Ms. Janina Keene. She is here on behalf of the Behavioral Health Task Force. She and I have recently met. We discussed a lot of the possibilities and opportunities that are here on the island regarding mental health things that we see as part of the health department, so that we can start growing the health department to more than just septic, food, and housing. Start affecting the parts of the health of public health that is taught in public health school rather than the typical environmental health
Spending
portion.
yourself
So
with tight
I would like to
tanks, right?
introduce
Want to guide me a little bit on what you would like me to speak about? Since you,
a lot of the ideas that we had regarding the possible
solutions?
solution.
Okay. Do you want me to talk at all about the problem?
Yes.
All right. Do you want me to talk about my background?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I'm Janina Keene, and I have been in medicine, I hate to date myself, for 40 years. I started out in emergency medicine. I'm an old inner city emergency room nurse, and then I got into hospital administration about 32 years ago, and worked at a university healthcare setting for many years, and then 18 years ago became the chief executive officer of a treatment facility in Connecticut. It was a 12-step oriented facility when I took it over, and then over time, I was able to transform it into a medically oriented, evidence-based corporate model. And it was, I was educated and trained at Yale University. I have my graduate degree. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner in behavioral health Anyway, I retired from my job because I did it for 18 years and decided that I either wanted to work in government or try to help government or help a community. I came out here on the invitation of Holly McGowan, and I initially taught a family program, and then I was introduced to the Behavioral Health Task Force. I was looking at their charge. I was looking at what they had done so far. I had made recommendations on how they should move forward, and they hired me for a 3-month consultation. Presently, what I'm doing and will be presenting to them, one of the things that hadn't been done since they've been convened as a task force is one of their charge was to improve the behavioral health systems on the island. But before you can actually improve systems, you'd have to measure prevalence of illness. And so I suggested that we find an epidemiologist to measure the breadth and depth of the problems on Nantucket, and in a systematic metric way, and you could speak of that as an epidemiologist, you know what I'm talking about, and then we take that measurement and we map it against existing services. We see where those services are lacking, and then build around what you're lacking. I think just from I have interviewed probably now, Fernando being one of the people, but there were over 20 people on the Behavioral Health Task Force that I interviewed. They wanted me to develop a strategic plan for them, but I felt that I wasn't sure they even knew where they were at yet, and so I wanted to talk with them and ask them the 4 following questions. What do you see as the behavioral health problems on the island? What do you see as a solution to those problems? Why are you on the task force? What do you hope to contribute? And what do you hope the task force to contribute? It was very prevalent in all my conversations that substance abuse disorder was flagrant on the island, that there were no systems in place to address the problem. They also talked about the behavioral health issues, and that the systems you have in place, and maybe those systems might have worked several years ago, but today they're not able to meet the magnitude of the problems that you have, as evidenced by the waiting lists for people. You know, if somebody, if you have a medical problem, it doesn't take much energy to call your primary care physician, say, I need antibiotics, I can't breathe, I have an upper respiratory. But for a human being who may be suffering from a behavioral health disorder, a substance abuse disorder, to get to the place where you finally muster the courage to interface with help and then be told that you can't get in for a month or 2 months is very problematic. I do know that when I was here in April, that the waiting list for your only system that you have in place was 1 month, and I was told at the end of June when I was here again that it was a 2-month waiting list. You can't have that. You're not meeting the needs of your community by having those kinds of wait lists. That being said and done, and there's a lot of factors for that, I'm sure, housing, et cetera, et cetera. I'm speaking to the choir here. I don't have to tell you all those things. You know those things. But what I was talking about with Fernando, and one of the epidemiology studies that I have that I am going to be presenting is from Yale University. Yale University has talked about actually coming out here, measuring the prevalence of illness, but also bringing telemedicine out here for you, where you can then interface with the Yale psychiatrist, and the patient can meet with the Yale psychiatrist. They can get a care plan, and then next year actually talk about prescribing. So you'll have a prescriber here a half day a week through telemedicine. They're also talking about coming out here to educate your existing physicians on how to interface with people with substance use disorder, how to do brief interventions for substance use disorder, how to do motivational interviewing. So they'll also educate. As I said to Fernando, and I'm more an architect in terms of how I think than a manager, that what is needed out here is, you don't have even a building really dead. You have what you have. The hospital's going to have to redo or undo or whatever they're going to do. Is not. It doesn't speak highly of what you think about behavioral health. I think that a center would be warranted that contains office space for private clinicians, It contains the ability to do intensive outpatient programs. It can maybe even contain a partial hospital program. Simultaneously with that type of structure, and that you're going to have to align with outside agencies, whether that's, I think Gosnold might be, they have talked about coming out here. I know Ray Tomasi really well. I think highly of him. That would help you build some infrastructure presently. You may, if Yale or Harvard or one of they can come out here, you could have training sites out here. They would bring personnel to do that, whether you did that vis-a-vis telemedicine or they literally had boots on the ground. Simultaneously with that type of building that needs probably to be built would be another place, and I did this, I had a home for 20 years on Martha's Vineyard, so I was part of this not task force, we were actually a 501c3. We built what you call the Vineyard House, and that was a sober transitional house for men and for women. And so what would happen is somebody, if they had a substance use problem and they could afford to go off island, they could get the treatment that they need off island, but then come back rather than going into their immediate environment, which might be stressful, with the family, and if the family wasn't treated, they can go into transitional housing. They can then go to your community, your new behavioral health center, where they can go into an IOP program or partial hospital program or individual therapy, depending on what their behavioral health needs would be at the time. Or if you have someone who cannot afford to go off island, if there's somehow they can be detoxed, they can go into that transitional housing and then they can be treated in this behavioral health center. So this was the things that I presented. He liked that. He says, "Oh, come to the board." I said, "Okay." And so here I am. I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Well, I've always said the major health problems on this island is tick-borne disease, the pollution of our water, opiate addiction, so it's substance abuse, and safe housing. And we at the board tend not to, we just sit here and listen for people's variances and complaints, but I'd love to see the health department really be a lot more active in that kind of, those issues.
Well, your newly elected employee was very excited about when he heard about this and said, "Please come and talk to you." So Roberto had a passion about the idea.
I just have one question. Well, obviously mental illness and substance abuse is a major problem on this island. Is there enough population or patients to sustain like a full-time dedicated center? Because you're ultimately going to run into financial problems, and staffing is going to cost money, and is there enough people to either paying themselves or through insurance to support such an organization?
Well, that's why.
Or will it be the 560th nonprofit organization on the island that we have to raise money for?
That's why you need to, first of all, do a prevalence study. You'll do the prevalence study, then you'll map it against your existing treatment, and then from there they will build for you, or they'll at least tell you what you need to meet the need. So you don't want to build anything until you have that study. That study and metrics, it should be metric driven, not good idea driven.
Have you been working with the hospital or the new concepts of some of the new ideas in the hospital? Because there's been discussion on and off of having a couple psychiatry beds. And
what the hospital is doing, and yes, I have talked about that. What they're doing is they're dedicating a total of 4 beds, 2 in the ER and 2 in the med-surg unit. And those beds are what you call swing beds. So in other words, if you're having a cardiovascular issue, they can go in those beds. But then those beds are set up in such a way that if you have a psychiatric issue, you could maintain safety of your hospital personnel in that bed as well as the safety of the person with the psychiatric issue. So that's how they're structuring that.
any questions from the board?
Just a quick one. Does the task force work autonomously, or is it working in concert with the hospital?
It works autonomously, is my understanding. Yes.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you. Well, good luck. Let us know, and Roberto will keep us informed.
Yeah, and he and I we've become new best friends. So that.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyways, okay, thank you.
Nine
Let's go back.
Dukes.
We have 9 Dukes Road variance from Regulation 68.
Yes. So if you remember, we had a blanket variance request
Yes.
For the Dukes Road neighborhood. This particular location has a hydraulic failure.
Yes.
So the department has asked her to connect to
The
sewer,
sewer.
but they are asking for the same variance so that they can defer at the time. The request is in writing in your packet
Right.
as well. And I believe there is a representative here to
Go ahead, please.
speak.
Hello. I know we're in failure, and I know I have to tie in, and I'm
Just
not.
identify yourself first.
Oh, Christy Brazita, sorry. And I am now Christy Brazita. Brazita, Brizida. This house has recently fallen into my hands, so I'm trying. I know we're in failure, and I know I have to tie in. I can only move as fast as the contractors allow me to. I have contacted Teddy King finally on Friday. He responded saying that he will be doing their surveying of the land, and I've already contacted Tom Craddock, who's willing to give me an estimate once I have that plan. So I was hoping to get the permit by now, but obviously I need all these things before I can do so. So I'm just looking for a extension and avoid the daily fine. I know I don't have the 18-month extension, but maybe a 6-month. I don't know how long it will actually take. I'm just at the start of this with the contractors.
But you've started the process.
I just started the process.
And when would the date for fining be?
It would have been September 1st oh, no, not yet? No. All right, sorry. Sorry, I'm mixing up my dates now.
Too many of these things go wrong.
Too many. Balls in the air.
They would be being fined right now for non-compliance, but she's asking for this variance request, so she's in lieu at the moment of that.
Okay, so even...
I understand. Well, I'm glad you told me we're starting the process. Otherwise, I'm...
Oh, I'm trying, but I
moving.
was trying to contact
All right,
Teddy
questions?
for a while.
Questions or comments from the board? Very quiet.
Maybe in general on Dukes Road, is everybody else
Everyone else
basically
has the,
signed up and they're getting their,
they're
they're moving forward?
everyone else is moving forward. This is the first of this type.
I mean,
And I think probably
this
the last
party's
two.
moving forward also at her own
And they're moving forward
pace
now.
and trying to get it done.
That's
right?
new.
So-
Trying, yes.
But we extended Dukes for a certain time, but
This
not
is
in this case.
Not in this
not
case.
in this case, exactly.
Duke's Road, I think, got an 18-month
Yes.
extension. I don't
the
expect that.
And the, well, you could file. She have to file to put in sewer, or
Sorry? What do you mean by that?
I mean, she's in the process. Here.
Yes. So what she's asking for is to make sure that we don't. So
Well,
we wouldn't be doing the enforcement right now.
I don't see
now
any,
that we know.
if she's
but
really doing the. I don't see any reason to do
Yeah.
the enforcement.
exactly,
Anyway.
exactly.
Just for clarification, this system's been hydraulically failed for over 10 years.
Yes.
The department has sent multiple letters to to the applicant with nothing getting done. She's here today trying to take care of it based on a letter I sent 30 days ago.
If I can just comment on that for a second. As I said, the house was just put in my care. It's now in a trust as me as the beneficiary after a separation. I started this process with Richard Ray to get a betterment to fix the septic. And when I contacted a few surveyors, he told me to hold off on the process because there was going to be a sewer line going in. So if he didn't give me that information, I would have gone through all this and installed the new septic, only to have to do this now because it's mandatory on Dukes Road. So I appreciated that information, and I held off. There's just so much I can do. I'm trying to do it by myself, and I was very happy to talk to somebody who told me I don't have to pay the privilege fee, that once I get that, I just have to bring that to my taxes. So that's a huge plus, and I'm going to try and work out the finances. I think I did put in my letter that I might be applying for a betterment, depending on what I figure out the final costs are going to be after everything.
Comments?
Real quick. And we're very pleased she's here today to take care of the issue.
Yes.
And we don't want to fine her. She's, I believe a 6-month period is perfect between her providing us the permit and the completion of work due to how difficult it is.
That's
to
what
get
I was asking
contractors.
for. When is she going to file the permit? And then once she's filed the permit, then she's essentially complied with the regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to wait for Teddy to. I just got here on Island this morning, and I emailed him. He said we could meet this week, but I haven't heard from him. As soon as he does that, and he said he would help me with all the permit information as far as what tank I'm going to do, if I'm retrofitting or doing the other tank, and all the other information I need that I have to go to apply for the permit with. He's going to help me with that.
Yeah, if you remember, the Dukes Road is a low pressure line.
Yes.
They need
Yes,
to use the
we
pumps.
So
spent a lot of the time discussing Duke's Road.
can you remind me again, is this lot different from every other lot? Or I'm a
The
little
lot
confused.
is the lot is not different. The only situation that's different on this one is that this was a hydraulic failure. So
So
she's
that meant the timing was more immediate to
Ex-
get connected.
exactly.
I just want to make sure I got that.
Exactly.
Yes, so this doesn't apply to
Exactly.
the general extension we've given to the road.
Exactly.
This is a failure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thoughts, recommendations?
I'm all set.
Can we grant the extension once the permits are in?
Well,
It sounds like they're about to happen.
Is it just one permit? I have to go once I get the
Once
to do.
once the sewer entry permit is coming, because they require the engineering and the surveying and everything. Once that sewer permit has been installed, they've essentially complied with our part of the regulation. Now it's just a matter of them having to connect, which is the DPW portion.
And how long will it take to get a permit?
They say it takes a week or two for approval, I believe, once I
What-
submit the paperwork.
Once the paperwork gets submitted, it's just right now with the level of work that's happening on the island, it can take. It all depends on the engineering, the surveying, the estimates, the timeline.
So is there a sense we'd extend this to September, and if it's not permitted by that time, then we would fine her?
And does that mean that they didn't accept my permit? Because I believe, working with them, I could get this permit within the month to the...
Yeah, so what I think, what I'm suggesting, I don't hear any board objecting, is that we would give you till September to get a permit.
Okay, perfect.
But if
There's
that,
a little bit of a time limit there to keep the incentive to get it done.
right, but if you don't have it by September, then we will have to take necessary corrective action.
No, so I think I can definitely get that done. And then how do we judge how long it's going to take after that?
Well, once you have the permit, you've met the regulation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I-
we would be very, I mean.
Yes, no, because
Yeah.
my septic is
No,
a failure.
Excuse me, I'm not correct. This is a failure, so you
Yeah.
have to get the permit and fix it.
Yes.
Right. That's what I'm here for. Is do I have like 6 months?
6 months is usually,
6 months is usually the number.
that's what it is, yeah.
It'd be nice if you did a lot faster than that.
Well,
You should
I
go
would
and
I
get it done.
would love to. It depends on the contractors,
So,
right?
excuse me, what happens in the meantime with the system?
She's already said in here that she'll be getting the systems pumped as needed.
So you should, okay.
How often would be my question. I was waiting to get the ruling from you.
How often?
That it all depends on use. That's what it's always that's the hardest part of it. It always depends on use.
Go
Mhm.
ahead. I'm only here about twice a month just to really check on the property, and that's usually about 4 days. And that's year-round. I come all winter long just to make sure the property's okay as well. There's no full-time.
In that case, I would say as needed. I think Art.
As needed, how do we
Mhm.
determine as needed?
If Teddy is going to be monitoring this, I think he would be able. Between Teddy and George, they would be able to pump as needed.
Okay,
I think that's right,
that's right. You're our expert here.
yeah.
All right. So I need a motion that would grant 9 Dukes Road a variance of Regulation 68, which would imply that you would have the owner, you are now the owner.
I am.
Now the owner would have to have a permit for correction
By
by
September.
September 1st, and that the present failed system would be pumped as needed as determined by her consultants.
Mhm.
How's that sound?
It's fine.
Do I hear such a motion?
I make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Further discussion? we have one quick discussion here.
And a permanent repair
Within 6 months.
within 6
You
months
tack
after
that
that.
on, you got everything in one motion.
All right, so let's add that, with a permanent repair within 6 months.
That means tying into the sewer line, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. We have that motion. All in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. So you understand?
Yes, I do.
It's
Thank you very much.
Permanent by September, tied in within 6 months. But if you don't have the permit by September, then the health department will find.
September 1st, or, I mean,
September 1st.
September 1st. So the
That's
application
6
submitted.
weeks. Yes.
Okay. Oh, waiting for approval.
Otherwise, the health department will take corrective action
Okay,
as needed.
definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
As needed.
As determined by the people that are working
Her
on it,
consultants.
consultants or experts working with her.
Okay.
Appeal of well placement on 21 Quidnet Road.
Yes. So there has been a well permit issued at 21 Quidnet Road based on a location, and that well has, as per our regulations, we required a 300-foot well protection area. The permit was issued, but within that 30-day issue period, it was appealed, and I believe the client's attorney is here to discuss that appeal. That's always something.
Mr. Chairman, Stephen Cohen. I represent the owner of 19 Quidnet Road, which is the abutting property. And just to keep this very simple, the 300-foot local buffer takes up substantially all of where my client would intend to locate their house and septic system, and that the placement of this well would force them to put a septic system far away from the house. It is much easier for a well to be relocated, and in this system, there is locations up near the road, and then there's locations to the east near a way that travels there. There are at least 2 or 3 locations where a well could be placed that would essentially have no impact on any other lot. So we were hoping that the board would either require that one of the alternative locations be used, or that there's also a catch that the party being appealed actually installed the well. We don't know what day they started, but my client was out here on the 15th, and it was in the process of being installed, which is, I think the permit was issued on the 7th, so that's less than 10 days there. But if they wanted to keep that well in the same location, we'd be amenable to the board waiving the 300-foot buffer that is a local rule and sticking with the 100-foot buffer, which is a state rule, which would only encroach into my client's property about 40 or 50 feet instead of this massive 300 feet cutting the swath across. So that's the request, to either require the applicant to relocate the well to a place where it doesn't have this massive impact, or to waive the 300-foot portion of the buffer and stick with the state 100-foot buffer.
And I also believe that a representative from 21 Quidnet Road is here as well, an engineer.
Could I just ask, Mr. Cohen, did you mention which lot you were representing, just so I know what?
Sure, 19, it's to the left.
Just the one to the left of the map?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Wait a second. It says, I was confused. This is 21. Oh.
21 is where the well is.
21 is where the well is, and you're representing 19, saying, I got you.
Yeah.
And 21 was the white property previously?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
My name is Mary Ann Hanley. I represent 21 Quidnet Road, LLC, the owner of the property at 21 Quidnet. Jeff Blackwell is here, and he actually designed the well plan, which Artel issued the permit for. It meets all of the requirements of the regulations. And I'm going to have Jeff speak briefly as to the areas that are shown on the well and on those plans that you have before you. There certainly is substantial room for the abutter to put a well and a septic system in a house on the property with this well positioned as it is. Jeffrey.
Jeff Blackwell for the defendant. I don't know. the plan that I gave you shows a highlighted area which represents well over half of the property where a septic system can be placed. The large areas that are available are at the very north along Quidnet Road, centrally, and also to the south and easterly side of the property. I had actually performed soil testing at 19 on the run-up to the transfer of the property, and the soil testing took place just south of the well protection zone in the area that's labeled Area 38,967. So, we checked the health department records. The person that acquired number 19 had not filed anything. To my knowledge, there was no filings at the HDC or any other board that would give us a clue as to where they really want to place the house. It is only now that the well permit was issued and the well installed that we're hearing, oh, that's where we want to put the house and septic system. So, the point is, more than half of the property is available for a septic system in areas that cover the entire length of the property. And yes, the well was installed within the 30-day appeal period, but as someone that's involved in well and septic system placements and site designs, they have ample room and flexibility to place the septic system pretty much in any location that would accommodate a house.
Questions from the board?
The existing well it shows down here, what is that existing well right here?
That's the second well on that property.
Okay.
On 21.
Okay.
And the other existing well is servicing, what is it, 17?
Yes. Actually, I think that's 15.
15, well, whatever the number is to the left.
Yes,
Yeah.
to the west of number 19.
And what you're saying is the septic could go in any of the areas you've marked out in yellow.
That's correct.
Based on Nantucket or state?
State and local regulations.
State and local.
Are there issues of topography where you're high here and low here, and that has issues that might impact I have no idea, the placement of the septic field relative to a house? I mean, what if they wanted the house? I'm just trying to think of the relationship between the two of them. The septic and the house.
I have no idea where the house is. Yeah. Well, we don't have any clue based on filings as to where a house might be placed.
Yeah.
Can you come over here one more time? Explain this to me. Is this well in?
No, I'm showing on this plan two well symbols with a P next to them, and those are wells that could be placed on the property that would not substantially further shut out any more of that property. So these two locations here are would substantially maintain the yellow highlighted areas as available septic systems.
Oh, you're talking about the P here?
So
yeah, here and here.
Explain to me what you're saying.
And you can do it down here because there's not a septic system nearby.
You're saying that you don't want this well here?
Right.
It's already within a particular area.
Because your client is going to put their house
yours,
here?
why can't yours area, I don't know how this works. Jeff, what if you twisted? Could this be going up here as opposed to here? The groundwater flows, is it going that way? Gotcha, okay. Sort of like first come, first serve? Isn't that sort of the deal here?
Well, the problem is if you put the septic in the backyard, it prevents you from having like a pool or a cottage because of this. Well, thank you for your tone, Ms. Hanley.
Do your clients have plans? Do they have plans?
They are discussing with an architect. They're not. They were not that far in the process, and they were really surprise. The problem with this back here is that, you know, if you put a septic system in this bracket shape,
Right.
it renders most of the yard unusable because of the buffer zones. If they wanted to have a little pool and cottage, you'd have to have it back here, you know, because of the. And then putting it way up here would require a pump and would require clear cutting in the front of the yard. And this area, they want to be able to have vegetation for privacy, not a clear cut septic field. So even though
If you put it over here, then the well
even
radius
though
would
there's
be
a
in the
location,
septic.
they'd rather have program here and they'd rather
That's
have privacy
existing.
screening here.
This
And
is
then where would,
this
if
is
that was the
brand
case,
new.
where would this well have to go?
It could go in the front.
We've got two conversations, and
Yeah.
we really should be having one, because
Yep.
everyone needs to be.
All right, sorry, yep.
So I was just saying that the problem with the front is that when you have a septic system, it requires you to essentially clear cut it, and what they'd rather have is privacy, not lawn and off on the road. So they'd rather have vegetation for privacy in the front. And then in the back, if they wanted to have the house here and the septic system here, and then be able to have a pool, the septic system and the buffer zones would likely prevent that. It would require it, to be pretty crowded in there. And then, so having this well here is in the worst possible location. The well could be here and it wouldn't interfere. The well could be here and it wouldn't interfere with anything. But here, it would make my client's program very difficult.
So you've run the setbacks from these facilities to know where a well could go, Steve?
Yeah, essentially, here it doesn't interfere with anything, and here it doesn't interfere with anything.
Up near the road.
Up near the road, yeah. And this way here has a constructed path. You could get a trailer down there today without cutting any trees. So you could easily move the well without having any interference. But if you put it here, then my client has sort of an odd shape for the development that they want to do in their backyard, or they're forced to clear cut their front yard instead of having privacy. So it also would require more piping, more pumping. It's a fairly substantial burden. But again, if my client's willing to take a compromise, if you're willing to if you think it's a good idea of just waiving the local bylaw and sticking with the state buffer so that the well could stay in the same place, and then
Where would the state buffer be?
essentially if you take this circle and superimpose it here,
I got you.
so it would
So
come
it
both.
would be like there.
Yeah, right.
So they would have all of this.
Yeah, so this shape would become this shape. So it would still clip my client's yard, but not as much. So we're trying to be reasonable without having the massive impact.
Comments?
Comments from the health department?
You are. If I could respond to a couple of the
Please, go
items
right ahead.
that Mr. Cohen brought up. His arguments about piping and excavation and brush cutting, that all applies equally well if my client has to relocate this lot to where they want her to locate it or think they want her to relocate it. Her property is adjacent to Audubon property. There's a wetland there that has to be considered. She's got farm animals on her lot. She keeps horses. So all of the excavation and disturbance issues are just as important to my client as they are to anybody else's. There's plenty of room on this plan for the owners of 19 Quidnet to install a very nice septic system, to install a very nice house, and to have a nice well. It's almost 800 feet deep, so there certainly is plenty of room up by the street for them to have a vegetated buffer that would not be disturbed by the placement of a septic system. As far as reducing the local wellhead protection zone, I'd need to talk to my client about that, frankly. I don't think we want to be in a position where we would agree to allow you to do something that you do not customarily do at the risk of her well becoming polluted because the neighbor at 19 Quidnet then puts in a septic system that could contaminate it. Those wellhead protection zones are there for a reason. They're there because of the water, the way that the groundwater flows. So I frankly, I don't think that you have the ability to waive that. We're not asking it, and as the applicant, we would have to ask for that. So that would be another matter for another day. Jeff, do you have, the other thing I would bring up is I believe that the owners of 15 Quidnet and 19 Quidnet purchased those property together several years ago, and then a divorce ensued and one of the lots got turned over to somebody else. But, they also installed their own well right here on the lot line. They established where some of the septic system issues were going to come up. And frankly, they could have put another well on this lot, or they could have put their septic system in a long time ago. They haven't done anything about it. There's nothing in the public record for us to know what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it, and they really haven't presented any viable alternatives to us. Mr. Cohen did send us over a couple of sketch plans that had some crudely drawn wellhead protection zones. I don't have any information from him that they've actually had a surveyor go out and look at any of this stuff. So I would ask you to deny this appeal. The well that we placed meets the requirements of the Board of Health regulations. It doesn't deprive any of the neighboring property owners from using their property. He could still be developed. They could still have a pool, tennis courts. They used to have a golf course there, whatever. There's plenty of room for them to accommodate their improvements and have this well where it's currently located.
Thank you.
It seems to me on disturbance that the well is a lot less disturbance than a septic system, but you don't want to go up near the road with the well for what was the reason for that? If that's a viable option, I don't know that it is. That just seems on the map because it goes under the road and hits the neighbor across the street a little bit, but
we didn't.
And your piping is longer to get back down. I assume that's an issue.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
But go ahead. Sorry.
There are properties across the street that have wells and septic systems as well, and we couldn't place a well up along Quidnet Road because the well protection zone for that well would have extended across Quidnet Road into the area of those properties.
So if we saw an extended map, we'd see those districts. Okay.
Because if you swing this around, well, isn't there more room to go that way?
You can't swing those because the
water's
circles are going which way the water, the groundwater flows on.
So it's almost like it has to go here or here or here.
It can't go anywhere then.
Well, it might go here and it might go here, but it runs into.
I gotcha.
You can see across the street on the GIS map. There's a house right over there.
All right. Other comments, thoughts?
I just don't like the idea of 19 not having anything proposed, but then telling me where I'm going to put my well on my own lot. So I'm inclined to leave it where it is, and there's plenty of room on the lot where they can figure out where they're going to put their septic.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to put the septic up near the road and have the house further south, Steve.
Yeah, right.
I can see where the water, I don't know how high it is here, but the water's off to the right, so whether you can see Sacagawea Pond from the lot, it could be important to people. So.
Am I right? Comments?
I said, did we have anything from the health department on that?
As far as the 300-foot down gradient, waiving that, my opinion would be I wouldn't waive it. It's a matter of public health. Yeah. As far as there's plenty of room on that lot to put a septic system. These engineers are very creative. All it takes is a pump. It's no real increase in fees or anything like that. It's very feasible to be able to do whatever they want on that lot, from my opinion.
So it's just the distance from the house to wherever the thing is.
Yeah,
Might be a little longer.
Every house has a tank, all right? Yeah. After that, tank, pump chamber, that leach facility. The leach facility is the issue as far as clear cutting and having. That can be a good distance away. It can be located up front. It could be located down back. It really is really not much of an issue, in my opinion.
I guess my concern is the 30-day period wasn't really followed here, yes?
So
I need a clarification.
Okay, the 30-day appeal period, it's the applicant drills at their own risk, basically in that 30 days. They wait 30 days, then they drill it to see if there are any appeals, or they drill within the 30 days at their own risk.
All right, well, I agree on that. I wouldn't change
The local state.
I wouldn't change that. I agree, that's a health issue, and we can't be just changing that. I'm concerned that it was drilled less than the 30-day period. That bothers me. So there's some lack of fairness both sides here, which is of concern. So let's just get to it. Any other comments?
I agree with Stephen. I mean, I would might feel, maybe I'd feel a little different if there was a set of plans laid out for this lot, and there was really a problem then. But the way it's situated now, I don't think these people have a problem at all.
You mean 19?
Yeah, I mean, they're within the three. You know, they did the 300-foot buffer. They've got the thing. They've got the well laid out where they want to put it, and they're not interfering actually with anything in this other lot because there's nothing there.
I think of it as sort of first come, first serve, Jim. I mean, that's sort of what you're saying in a way. If they had a plan, it might be a different issue. But right now, there isn't one. So
there isn't anything.
Well, one of those classic situations where I could go either way. There is no plan, but there is a limitation upon what they can do in that lot. That's clear. But I have to deal with health issues here. So we can't change the size of the protection zone at all. So is there a health issue here? There's an inconvenience issue for 19 because they have, even though they're not plans, how they produce those plans is still going to be limited. And that's not a health issue.
And the only problem in a way is you don't see at least I don't see the setback or whatever you call it from the existing leach trenches. Are they going to be abandoned or?
No, those are active now.
Those are active.
Yes.
So if you had a circle around there, it'd be easier for us to tell whether you could move the well further to the east in some fashion. But I assume that runs into that.
Well, that would, even if it runs, you can assume if you move this back, it would. Yeah. But there's an existing well to the east of that now.
Right. Yeah, so you'd have to.
There's two wells on the property. That one at the edge near the Autobahn, says existing well?
That's correct.
And there's a reason why there was a new well? Well, these two well, there was already a well at the property?
Yes, because the owner wanted to supply water to a paddock area where she has horses.
Okay. I need a motion. I think we've talked this out. I think we need a motion to approve or disapprove the appeal for the well placement at 21 Quidnet. Very quiet here.
Well, this is a tough one.
No motion?
It just seemed to me that even if you moved it to the east a little bit, it doesn't help get it out of the area. You know what I mean?
Can't get it out of the area.
Even if you move this over like this, it still is going to be up here, so it doesn't help. You know, there's room to come down here.
It doesn't help, but there's also another well on the property.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's an absence of wells.
Right.
Correct?
There is another well on the property, yes.
Yes. All right. We need a motion.
Interesting. So.
And the motion would be that we have a request for an appeal of the well placement. So we either have to support that request and appeal the well placement even though the well is already in, or we can deny the appeal. So.
The appeal was placement, not the footage.
Yeah, just the placement.
Well, you could, if someone wants to make a motion to change the footage, that's quite ahead, but I would vote against that, I'll tell you that now. So I don't hear anybody making a motion, so if someone's going to make a motion, you want me to make a motion? Go ahead.
We need a motion. It looks like, but let's get a motion and we can talk about it. So I would move that we deny the appeal.
Right.
Okay, so we have a motion to deny the appeal. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion?
No.
It's just unfortunate. I don't know how else to get at it, frankly. I don't like the first come, first served rule necessarily.
I don't like any of this, quite frankly.
I'm not sure what else to do about it, so.
Because we can look at this as a health issue. It's not a...
Yeah, we're not the designers of the lot layout of the architects or the placement of the house or anything else. We're just looking at that part of it, so.
I know, I mean, I would, on a lot of grounds, I would support the appeal because of the lack of the 30-day wait, the problem it's going to have on them, but I can't find a health issue here that I can find. Anyone give me a health issue? All right, so we have a motion to deny the appeal. All in favor of denying the appeal, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I will oppose. So we have balance. The appeal is denied.
Yeah, I'm just
Thank you.
trying to-
Thank you.
But you see, the problem is you do
It's
this
not our
forever.
job.
We could be designing this ourselves forever. Forget it.
Okay. That's not our function. This was not an easy one. All right. We have a public hearing on 167 Hummock Pond mobile unit license.
Yes. So,
You want to explain this, and then I'll open the hearing.
yes, the people you see before you is the proprietors of 167 Raw.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Okay. The proprietor of 167 Raw. Over the course of the past few months, we have attempted to, or our inspectors have attempted to do inspections at their base of operations, which was agreed to be the Nautilus kitchen between the hours of 5 and 8. Which is what was agreed on with the Board of Health application, the permit. We've had multiple non-compliant issues, including, but not limited to, making food, ready-to-eat foods in the unlicensed kitchen located at 167 Hummock Pond Road. After multiple attempts to bring the establishment into compliance, the staff felt that it was prudent to bring a suspension or a revocation hearing forth to the board to either suspend or revoke the food permit for this operation.
Okay. The issue before us then is whether or not, or we have a request to suspend the license for the mobile unit. So the public hearing is now open. And please introduce yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon, members of the board. Mr. Chairman, James Merberg. I'm an attorney. I'm representing Mr. Sandoli, who's present. We have some information to share with the board whenever the board's ready to hear from us.
We'll go right ahead.
Thank you.
Can I interrupt 1 second? Excuse me. I mentioned to the chair that I'm going to have to leave shortly for a commitment, so I could stay for a little bit of this, but I probably won't make it through to the end.
That's
sorry
okay.
to the board members. But
Well, we would appreciate your presence as long as possible because you always give us good
so,
advice.
Anyway, there you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman,
Could I ask you to spell your last name?
sure, it's spelled M-E-R, B like boy, E-R-G, Merberg. James is my first name. I've had an opportunity and the pleasure of meeting the new health inspector, the new director. We had one in-person meeting. We had a little further discussions today. Mr. Sandoli, for the edification of the board, is the second-generation operator of this facility. In the fall of this past year, he made an agreement with his father, who had stepped down from operating the business, that he would take over the business. So this season is his first season as an operator. During his younger years and college years, he did work in this facility, but this is the first time that he's assumed full control for this facility. My client is 29, his dad is 66 and has retired. When I first got involved in this matter, and there was one other issue before the selectmen about being able to display beer and wine, Mr. Sandoli and I started to talk about the problems. Mr. Sandoli presented me with a letter asking for a hearing. I think it was just an error. It said the hearing was the 17th, which turned out to be a Sunday, of course. We know the hearing's today, about compliance issues. Mr. Sandoli is finding his way, if you will, as the owner and manager of this business. He prepared some materials for me, and I have a copy to submit to the board, which lists the issues associated with the so-called food truck. It has to do with removal of gray water. The food truck, it's actually a trailer, it's not a mobile device, it has to be towed, has two 21-gallon holding tanks. The health department, and correctly so, has been requiring that they tow the trailer down to the Nautilus, remove the gray water, and then return it to the site out on Hummock Pond Road. He's been doing that. At the end of my presentation, I'd like to talk to you about some potential alternatives that would help comply with the regulations. But what I do have is a list of the inspections and the dates when the truck was taken down, the food truck was towed down to be emptied of wastewater. And if I may hand that forward.
Please.
Unfortunately, I only have a single copy. There was a miscommunication with my client. We were going to make multiple copies so at once. In any event, what we're trying to communicate to the board is the issues appear to be access to their facility, which I believe we've corrected. Mr. Sandoli has instructed all of his staff to make themselves available to anyone who needs to enter the premises. The log, I think, speaks to the days when there was a requirement that my client speak with this gentleman, Hank. I'm sorry, I don't know Hank's last name. Thank you, Mr. Jones. To notify him when they were down, transferring the gray water from the trailer. He's kept a log and attempted to do that. On the issue of compliance, my client is very interested and understands and respects the Board of Health, knows that he has obligations to the public, particularly as it relates to food preparation. He has done his very level best to do that. In the more recent past, I think the inspections that are attached to the list that I've submitted shows that the facility is clean, that the compliance is there. The principal issue has been this determination about losing about having the wastewater, the gray water, taken down to the Nautilus, which is the designated location, and turned in. What we are proposing and what I had suggested to the director is we were able to engage the services of Hughes, George Hughes, who prepared a letter, and again, if I may, I only have a single copy that I have submitted, in which he basically has agreed to go to this trailer and pump out the gray water on an as-needed basis. The water demands are relatively de minimis, but he had proposed one of two things, either putting a separate tight tank above ground on the facility to hold the excess water, or go as needed on a daily basis to have the gray water removed. I think that's largely the principal compliance issue. On the food preparation piece, my client understands that there's no food to be prepared other than in the Nautilus kitchen to be brought out to the facility. We understand that. We understand the reasons. Given some additional time, we may be in a position to come back and ask for a different determination for a commercial kitchen. It has to do with septic issues, water problems that may be addressed either with a lease of a sewage or some long-term accommodation with a neighbor to give us more capacity. What I'm asking the Board of Health to do respectfully today is to give my client, this is his first season, a little more time to prove that he can comply with all the conditions. He's genuinely interested in doing that. Unfortunately, he doesn't have all the guidance from his father. He's taken over the business. He's finding his way, and hopefully the board will recognize that as a young person trying to take over and manage the business in the true sense, that he will be able to comply. There is no question he understands that he's obligated to comply with the health regulations. We have no quarrel with the health department. The logistics associated with removing this gray water is somewhat daunting. He has to actually hook a truck up, tow the trailer down to Nautilus in the morning. They remove the gray water, then tow it back out to Hummock Pond Road, reinstall it, and then operate during the day. So on the issue of gray water, if we could, or if the board would consider letting Hughes pump from there rather than having go downtown with a trailer and a truck, then pump it and then come back, that might be probably maybe 80% of the non-compliance issue problems about getting down there between 6 and 8 o'clock in the morning each day or every day when the trailer has to be pumped. So essentially our position is we fully intend to and are trying in every possible way to comply with the Board of Health regulations. And again, I think a lot of this is the little bit of stuttering when you first take over a business. My client understands his obligations, has no quarrel with the regulations, and is trying to find a reasonable way to comply with all of the regulations.
Any questions from the board? Does the staff want to make any comments?
It has been the experience of the staff that there has been no effort for compliance since this letter was issued. I will ask the two inspectors who have been at the property to give their most recent interactions with Mr. Sandoli. To say the least, they were not polite. And it is clearly stated in the state regulation, which I have attached to this letter that Mr. Sandoli received, that at any time to misrepresent the work that you're doing, which in this case was creating some of the ready-to-eat foods at the location at 167 Hummock Pond, rather than at the property on Nautilus, and or to interfere with an inspection, which I believe Mr. Ross will be able to give an explanation. Those alone, each one of those alone is grounds for revocation or suspension of a permit to operate. So I'll ask Mr. Ross to give an explanation of the last interaction, which is written up and put into the file as well.
Hank Ross, I'm the part-time inspector in the summertime for the health department. This has been going on for probably 2 months now, and there's a very clear lease when he can be in the Nautilus doing his work. We didn't choose the Nautilus as the place he drops his gray water, and the facility is not only used to drop the gray water. That's only a portion of it, a small portion. Really, he's supposed to be doing production there of all his food that he's using, and he's supposed to be restocking his trailer and bringing the trailer there to the site. So by not taking the trailer, it's not being properly taken care of. He has gotten a van, which I noticed today about 9:30 this morning, that came downtown. I really didn't look at the van or didn't have time to inspect it. I was doing something else at the time. But I would say that 90% of the time the trailer has not been downtown. It's been on site. It hasn't moved. If it's being cleaned, it's being cleaned out there. Where the real gray water is going is questionable. Could be on the ground. Could be dispersed any place. A bucket of gray water is not enough to clean a trailer for a day, or to wash people's hands, or to take care of it properly. So my question is, if it's not being taken downtown, where is it going? Where's the gray water going? The rest of it? How is it being cleaned properly? It has on several occasions been fine. Today would be one example. I went out. It wasn't downtown. I went out to do some other inspections. I stopped by, went in and asked if it would be okay if I took a look at the trailer. Went out and looked at it with one of the other staff members, and it was clean, and it was fine. Did I know what happened to the gray water? I have no idea what happened to it. And did it leave the site? Not really. So I think that on another occasion, As Roberto mentioned, I walked in the kitchen, they were making pies. They don't have a license to do any food in there. They can only do fish, and that's all it exists for. The present property has a 3-bedroom septic system, is not adequate to do anything other than take care of the fish market, and that's it. It's very limited. And so that's really the extent of it. I could go through and tell you every day that they weren't there or were there, but I would say 90% of the time the trailer was not there to be inspected. And Kathy had called and stated that if we wanted 24 hours notice, just to email her, that would be fine. And so we've been going at the same time ever since. Jesse did mention in the hallway that he emailed me or left a voicemail. Unfortunately, I didn't get that, so that very well could be the case. But it was clear that the easiest way was probably to email Kathy and leave a message. Do you have any other questions, perhaps?
Well, could Roberto or you, Hank, summarize in brief bullet points your major problems? It's finding time to inspect. It's the improper use of food, things like that. Just give me.
In a quick, brief, and overview, the reason we're here at the hearing is the food code just specifically states that the mobile unit itself, the trailer, has to be at the base of operations every day for cleaning and preparation. Food has to be prepared at the Nautilus. The gray water has to be taken care of at the Nautilus. The septic system on site at 167 Hummock Pond does not have the capacity to take care of a full-service kitchen, which has been being used as one. The other aspect, the other reasons for the hearing today is because of misrepresentation of the work that was being done by Mr. Sandoli and interference with an inspection, some of which has been hostile.
Any other questions?
I would just say in response respectfully that with regard to the gray water, that water is being taken down to Nautilus and used through their facility. With regard to I believe there was 1 or 2 occasions when they were preparing pies, they brought it to my client's attention, and he discontinued that activity. They do prepare fish there, and they're permitted to do that. I understand why the Nautilus has to be used for the preparation of the pies. My client is now in full compliance with that issue. I would also just parenthetically point out, I know that the lobster trap has a similar type truck where a variance, at least for this season, was given with regard to the gray water. I'm not suggesting it's a precedent. It seems to be, respectfully, a practical way to address the problem, particularly where my client has to hook up a truck and tow it down daily or otherwise to the Nautilus, which is perhaps not the best location, but it was where they could make the arrangement or accommodation for this year. In subsequent years, I expect they'll make a different arrangement or improve the facility itself so they have waste treatment ability where they are rather than back and forth to town. With regard to any interactions with Mr. Ross or any of his colleagues, I certainly on behalf of my client would apologize for any intemperate actions on his part or his staff. We understand the health department plays a very important role in all of this. Public safety is important, health is important, and my client understands that. Had I perhaps been a little earlier to the game, maybe we would have been doing better, but I can assure you we're trying very hard to do the right thing. This was certainly, and I hate the colloquialism, a wake-up call from my client. He understands the rules are the rules, and we're asking the board to show, at least at this time, some understanding of someone trying to make his way for the first time. And I would ask that you take no formal action today. I think the fact that we're here for this hearing, that the Board of Health has articulated their issues and problems, is more than adequate for my client to correct all of those issues. And I believe that he has.
I just have a couple comments as far as the the lobster trap variance, we're going to review that in September for a lot of, so it's.
I understand.
We have.
I'm not suggesting it's precedent, it's just
We haven't worked our way through that yet.
I
So
fully
this is not,
appreciate that.
this is not a time to be talking about doing it again.
Right. I understand.
Until we review whether we made a mistake or not by granting that variance.
Understood.
I can maybe accept a new person in business finding their way. What really bothers me is what I understand is rudeness to these inspectors who are out there all the time in a very difficult situation. There's just no excuse for that. No excuse for that.
Hank and I had a discussion before this meeting, and I said my apologies for the instance in question. A lot of it was frustration based on being inspected, or at least trying to be inspected every single day. We're a very busy business, and we're doing our best to comply with all the regulations and keep everybody happy at the same time, along with Mr. Ross and any of the other health inspectors.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the public or from anyone else out there? And hearing no objections, we'll close the public hearing and we'll discuss this. Ladies and gentlemen, comments?
What does the health department feel about this, about the letter for the pump out? Is that satisfactory? No. Okay. Okay. No, I'm asking questions.
We have discussed this a lot about food trucks and pump out, and I think we agreed that we would talk about this in September. So I don't think we should be doing anything until the September meeting, till we get a chance to review the one variance we gave on being a little creative. All right?
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
No, that's
No,
fine.
right.
That's fine.
Yes.
I agree.
That's fine.
Okay. Other comments?
The only thing I would say to Mr. Sandoli is, I would think, if anything, you would have been looking for guidance from the health department, where it was your first time in business, in the food business, where you are. I would think you would be trying to pick their brain to help you along the way, rather than the Absolutely. other way.
And if I may comment, I have looked for guidance through the health department. I originally emailed Roberto and never heard back regarding a variance or anything I might be able to do to make the whole process go a little bit smoother. And I would welcome any guidance they may want to give as to how we can improve the situation and more easily comply with all the rules and regulations. Open arms. We would love any advice that we can get.
Can we issue a warning and have a strict list of exactly everything that has to be, I mean, I'm going to go back to Millie's and what we went through with Millie's. It's the middle of the season, I'm trying to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly courtesy at any and every occasion. Is that a possibility?
Well, we can do nothing. We can issue a warning. We can suspend. We could revoke. We can do any of the above.
Mm-hmm.
Steve?
I don't feel like we should suspend, but it's pretty simple. I mean, the trailer has to leave. You got to follow the rules. This has been a sticky situation with these food trailers. You know, it's become a problem. So, I mean, if the trailer has to leave for cleaning every day and go to the place of where the food's being made, that's the way it has to be.
Yeah, to me that's an easy one. The issue here is that, and I agree that perhaps a different approach of not being rude to our inspectors or asking for some more guidance would have gone a lot farther here and have made me a lot more comfortable with this. And the rules are the rules, and we spend a lot of time dealing with health rules.
Yes. And if I may, asking for guidance and asking for a variance are two different things.
Yes.
I did receive the email from Mr. Sandoli, and I did ask my office manager to respond to it with a variance request form, which I believe she did. And we never received the variance request. I'll leave it at that.
Any thoughts?
Well, I don't want to shut them down in the middle of the season, but I want to put a little pressure on them. And you either do what you're supposed to do, or then, otherwise we'll have to do something else, that's all.
Well, in some ways, I have no problem shutting them down even if it's the middle of the season, because there's some violations of rules and they weren't followed. And that reminds me of multiple times we've had requests of people wanting us to delay things and telling us, well, I'll follow the rules in September, or I'll follow the rules in October. I remember a housing issue we had a couple years ago. Oh, it's okay. I'll put 20 people in the basement, but I'll as long as you let me keep them there till September, and then I'll get rid of them. I mean, we have to have some consistency. So, I mean, I'm leaning to not a revoking, but a suspension. I mean, that's what I would do. But
Mr. Chairman, we're not, excuse me for interrupting, I apologize.
Please go ahead.
We're not suggesting that we shouldn't follow the rules, or that we're not following the rules. I appreciate Ms. Weld's comment that closing him down at the middle of his first year would be really draconian consequences for him and for his father, who basically sold him the business. What I am suggesting is we absolutely agree we should follow the rules. On the issue of respect, there's no argument from this quarter. We agree with that as we should under any circumstances. What I'm asking you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the board is to give him the opportunity to demonstrate that he can comply. We're not asking for a delay in compliance. We're asking for the opportunity to prove we are in compliance, which I think is a different issue. On the respect issue, there's no issue. I agree with the board. I think common sense dictates that under any circumstances, stressful or otherwise, one needs to be polite and respectful of the officers who are doing their own job. And I understand that, as does my client.
So you want to warn him?
Well, with very, very strict, and possibly even weekly checks.
Well, I have sense they...
We've already been doing weekly checks. We've been doing daily checks without compliance.
Yeah. And Jim, your thoughts?
It's hard for me, to really want to just shut them down. But, go ahead.
Just got a question. Just for clarification, you're talking about shutting down the food truck only, not
just
the
not the fish market.
Oh, I don't care about that. No. This fish market's an issue here. It's a food truck.
The food truck only.
Right,
this hearing is for the mobile food license.
So, go on.
So I would just, I would say if there's one more infraction, then I'd shut them down.
Absolutely.
Immediately.
I'd be good with that, too.
May I add to that the health department will have full authority to enact that policy so that we don't have to wait until August to get it shut down?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
The health department should be doing their job, and if you inspect whenever you want to inspect, then you go and you inspect when you want to inspect. And if there's a problem, you tell the board, and the board will shut them down.
Okay.
Well, no, I obviously have kinder members of the board. I agree with the thing. I just get very annoyed when I hear my inspectors are not being treated properly. There's no excuse for that. And I think instead of asking for variances, instead of being abusive to the inspectors, it would have been a lot easier to ask them to help you. And they'd be quite willing to do that. But I'm not going to, obviously we're not going to get the support to suspend you, but I do hear a consensus from the other members here that if there's one more violation, we would give the health department the authority to shut them down at that time. Without having to come back here.
Right.
One more comment.
Yeah, could I just make a comment? Just for clarification, daily inspection times, that's been a
point of contention?
Well, that would be essentially the way we would structure this is that shouldn't be a contention.
The lease with the Nautilus, I believe, is between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The lease allows for a lot more prep time than just 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. Those were the hours that we specified to the Board of Health that we would be returning to base.
Okay, so can we expect the truck there, the trailer there, between the hours of 5 and 8?
Like I said, when we have different plans, different things going on in the week, I left Mr. Ross a voicemail about a week ago specifying that we would be returning to base an hour later than usual, between the hours of 8 and 9, and as he said, he didn't receive that voicemail, but I did in fact leave him one, and we would be more than happy to leave voicemail, send email, whatever we have to do to notify that we will be changing our schedule, like Kathy mentioned, within 24 hours of the next return to base.
Just out of curiosity, what days were that? What day did you leave Mr. Ross that voicemail saying that you were going to be there at 8, between 8 and 9?
I actually dropped my old phone into the boat bilge, so that was on the old phone. I would say it was about a week ago, maybe a little bit longer.
So you mean on July 13th at 8 a.m. when Mr. Ross was there and you were not? Or on July 20th when Mr. Ross was there from 8 to 8:15?
I'm not referring to any specific day that he was there. I just had called, like I said, a week ago to notify him that this past week we were going to be returning to base an hour later than specified originally.
So the issue that we've been having is that the times that we were told that they're going to be there, Mr. Ross has inspected, for example, on July 20th, 7 a.m., 7:15, 7:30, 7:45, 8 a.m., and at 8:45, with no truck present. Keep in mind that our office doesn't open until 7:30. Mr. Ross has been coming in on his own time to get this inspection done. And we have relayed that information to Mr. Sandoli multiple times. A lot of it is being chalked up to being first-time
Yes.
owner.
Are we going to resolve this issue of inspections in time?
Could we suggest just a concrete time period between 7:30 and 9:30 to accommodate the time when the inspectors come on duty and when my client can get the trailer towed down there to be cleaned and prepped for the next day? 7:30 to 9:30 a.m. That way we have a 2-hour window that won't interfere with any scheduling. Doesn't have to be at 5 o'clock in the morning when the inspectors are not working.
We're okay with that if the board is.
Is that comfortable with you guys? You have to deal with it.
Yep. And
I
we
just
will-
want to make sure, the way I feel, any one infraction, anything,
Agreed.
as far as I'm concerned.
One more comment, then we'll move on.
Could we make Kathy Lefebvre the point person?
Point of contact.
You can do whatever you want to.
Yes,
That's,
I'll do that internally.
That's a
Mhm.
operational issue.
Yeah, I'll
We're
do that.
giving you a policy here.
Yeah, I'll take care of that.
We don't deal with that stuff. I wish I didn't deal with wells, but anyway. So, what I'm hearing from my other three members is what we will be proposing is that any violation we would give the health department authority to close down at that time. My inclination would be a little harsher, but I will follow. Excuse me. I will follow the recommendation of the rest of the board. So I need a recommendation, official recommendation proposed.
I'll move that we issue, you're going to give me the words.
Well, it would be something.
The word is ultimatum.
Well, I would.
The word is.
Well, I would say it's more of a. First, we issue an official warning, and that if at any time there is infraction of any health regulations, or if there's difficulty in coordinating inspection times, the health department has authority to close the food truck. We're not talking about the fish.
Mhm.
That's the proposal. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
As well? Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
The chairman will vote against it, but it does carry 3-1.
Thank you for your time.
All right. The Mouse Project review. Okay, this is a follow-up from, as you recall, a month or so ago, Dr. Elsfeld visited us with his proposal to produce genetically altered mice that would be essentially immune to Lyme disease, and eventually put them on the island, where eventually they would start reproducing, and ultimately the number of infected ticks would drop, and ultimately the amount of human tick-borne disease would as well diminish. For your information, he's also, I think either this week he's presenting the same proposal to Martha's Vineyard to get their idea. Because ideally this type of work would be best done in a small isolated area such as an island. What he had requested and what we discussed was if we were to be involved in this, how we would manage it. And I sent you a couple of drafts of a kind of a operational outline that I'd put together, and I'll be honest with you, it's very similar the kind of work I did in the past with humans, not with mice, but it fit nicely. And it's really based into three general areas: how the project would be managed, what the decision points for continuing the project would be, and also how we would have an independent group monitor the process. And just to summarize it, I mean, you've all had two drafts of it. The first draft, the second draft was after discussion with Dr. Elsfeld about selecting the safety committee, because that's always can be potentially controversial because you want an independent committee, but who's ever selecting the committee still has some bias, and you can't get around it. But the project, as I proposed, would be run by a steering committee where Dr. Esvelt would be the chair, and then any participating communities, which would be potentially Nantucket or potentially Martha's Vineyard, would nominate someone to that chair, and I would use the Board of Health as that nominating group. And they would manage the project and raise funds and do all of that. There'd be an independent data safety committee, which I think we can work at as to how it would be nominated to be safe. And then the decision points would be essentially, there's two decision points. One would be after he does his lab work, that it works and it seems to be okay, and he proposes the first trial on an uninhabited island, and there'd be a decision point after that to whether you would go to a full steam ahead, for instance, on Nantucket. And obviously, at this points, the Data Safety Committee would make some recommendation about whether you could go forward. I was proposing that after the first evaluation, which would be essentially to go to an isolated island, that the Board of Health of the participating communities would make that decision. But the final decision to go to, say, introduce the island itself, I believe should really be made, I thought about this a lot and I'd appreciate your input, would be at a town meeting level. Because to do something like introduce genetic mice, I'm sure will create a great deal of discussion. But hopefully if we ever get to that part, somewhere where none of us will longer, trust me, will no longer be on the board, that there'd be enough safety that would be able to go forward. So that's essentially what I'm proposing, that the Board of Health, the thing I like about this is there's an independent safety committee. The participating communities have representative on the steering committee, so we're involved and we know what's going on. But the steering committee would say, listen, you're going to have 6-headed rabbits running around on your island, so you ought to stop And that's a break. And then the final decision to go full steam is that then if the Board of Health was comfortable, we'd propose a warrant to the town meeting. Does that seem reasonable? As a general way to manage this project, if it ever happens. So
it provides transparency.
Transparency, it gives us input into the project without having, with somebody not involved directly looking at it from a safety point of view, and the final absolute decision is not us or the Board of Selectmen, but the town as a whole. Does that seem reasonable? Anybody see that seems reasonable out there? So what I'm asking for you is that I don't want to bring this document back to you every other day with a sentence or change, that I have your support to continue to work with Kevin about this, and that if say another community gets involved, that I would obviously, we couldn't have two working plans, we would have to have one working plan, that you let me go ahead on this on my own, and then obviously if there's a major change or a major alteration, I would come back for your support and approval.
This is your area of expertise. So.
Well, it's not totally my area of expertise. In fact, for our representatives on the steering committee, I know of two people on this island who actually have expertise, real expertise. And if we get that far, though, I would probably suggest one of those to be our representative. But we have quite a ways to go. And all right, so with your support, then, I will continue to be the representative. But at some point, when I feel that it really is going to happen, I think we can find someone who's a little more scientifically qualified to do that. And we won't do anything. There will not be mice running around this island unless it's approved by the whole town. And I suspect that will be a long time from now. All right? So I'll just keep you informed. And if anything different comes out of the discussions of a steering committee or a safety committee, I will let you know. I would not recommend going forward unless we had a structure similar to this, because it keeps us involved, but at the same time it prevents strange mice from running around. Okay, that's all I had to say about that. And that's next. Director's report?
Yeah, something as simple. Did you have any comments about that? Or? Okay.
It sounds great.
You okay with that?
Yes.
You want to see a copy of this? Did you see?
I would love to see a copy.
It's very drafty.
That's fine.
I mean,
See all those holes?
and it's going to change a lot, but it's not going to change substance. And if it changes too much, then I will come back to this group, or I will either quit. or quit us. Okay?
All right.
All right. Director's report.
Well, very nice and quick. We've, I think, taken care of most of the inspection report, all of the inspection report, I will say, in these last 2 hours. But I don't believe you've met our second intern. Have you met Abigail? Oh, okay. Last week, and Emma. And so our 2 interns have been here all summer. They've worked on the outreach and education, which I believe they have it in their file here for the Nantucket, that will be distributing it at the Nantucket. I was going to say Civic, but I know that's wrong. There's just too many groups.
NCA, yeah.
The NCA.
The forum on Monday, yeah.
Yes, the NCA forum on Monday. We'll be able to distribute all of that. They've done an excellent job at creating these brochures on sun safety, on ticks, on fertilizer, bike safety, biodegradable packaging. It's everything that we've been trying to get done through this outreach and education over the past 9 months. They did it in 2.
Terrific.
So it's been excellent. Interns really are a force multiplier. I strongly believe in having a robust internship program here. I will, as far as the infectious disease reports, I have all the numbers for the infectious diseases broken, for the reportable infectious disease broken down by month. However, I do not have the tick-borne disease yet. Stephen Tidd couldn't get that to me on time for today's meeting. I'll forward that to you in the same chart
If you
format.
just send us the charts.
Via email, exactly. The same charts that we presented
Yes.
that actually Abigail created for us last summer. Those exact charts. But as far as the infectious disease reports go, starting from February, which is when we started getting the numbers, we had 1 strep A, or 9 chlamydias, 2 hep Cs, 3 TBs, 2 gonorrheas, and 1 dengue and 1 Zika. So we did have those here. Those were all imported. They were not locally transmitted mosquito-borne disease. No local transmission beyond the one person or the one imported case that was seen at the hospital. And I'll leave it at that one to really to not allow any identifiable information to get out. I have been in contact with Stephen Tidd. We will be we're working together on a lot of issues of reporting. Well, not issues, I wouldn't say, but we are working together for a lot of the disease reporting. This is just the preliminary information. We're looking to start getting more robust data together. As Ms. Keene said, more of a metric and data-driven report here so that we can start growing the strength of the health department and bringing it into the data-based medicine and data-based public health that public health has become. And then, absolutely. And then I'll leave the health director's report at that one. It's just been a very exciting summer, and it's very, very fast-paced. And I hit a year next week. It's hard to believe that I've been here a year already.
We'll have to crack out some champagne or something. Yeah. Now that biodegradable, I know there was a press release, but I haven't seen anything in the paper.
I expected it to see it in the paper today.
I just skimmed through it.
I didn't see it in the newspaper today either. However,
I'm just like everything around here. All of a sudden, people are going to start saying, "You never told us about this."
So
that's what I'm afraid of.
In order to prevent that from happening, we did. Ann Barrett did email that press release, the regulation, the flyer, and the brochure that Abigail has. We emailed electronic copies of that in PDF form to every single vendor that we license with read receipt and delivery receipt, so they can't say we didn't tell them.
Thank you, because it's always the case.
Exactly, and it's one. And the other part is when people say that they didn't tell us about this. Well, it's been a bylaw since 1987.
I know.
This bylaw is almost as old as I am. So it's hard to say that they didn't know about this.
And the other question I had, I know that the Mosquito Control Commission was working on a letter. Did that ever get sent to the paper?
I have to check with Charlie. I know it was written.
That's right.
But at this time of year, getting things into the paper.
I know, but this seems it's not going to make much sense to put a letter about mosquito control in December.
Yeah,
I saw it. It looked pretty good.
Yeah, I remember seeing it too. I don't remember seeing it in the newspaper though.
No.
It's easier to get letters about noise complaints than it is about public health.
Or something. Well, maybe we should. The press is no longer here.
He was just here.
If you remind me, I'll tickle the paper to see if they got it and remind them that. No. Remind them that mosquito control letters are not going to be helpful in December.
Exactly. And then we're just moving forward from there. Fertilizer advisory is going very well.
Good.
We're working on creating a new education program that will be fully self-paced online. Right now we have 1 6-hour video where people have to sit down.
Oh, good Lord. That sounds...
Yes.
Could I bring that home tonight?
It's very brutal. We all agree that is not effective. So we're looking to create a series of 4 or 5 15 to 20-minute videos of how to calibrate spreaders, what type of fertilizer you're allowed to use, things like that. so that we can create a self-paced and a self-administered exam that would help get these licensed so that we can start getting the relevant information out there. And then Emma actually wrote our letter to the homeowner that everyone might be receiving. If you live in one of the watersheds, you will be getting a letter to the homeowner from the health department about fertilizer and fertilizer use.
I've seen an awful lot of very green lawns this year.
There was an article in the New York Post today about the Georgian Lake, I believe it is, Georgica Lake in the Hamptons, how it can't even support life anymore because of, Georgica Pond.
Okay.
Because it can't even support life anymore.
The other thing for September, again, are potentially conflicting and confusing regulations.
Yes. Hummock and Harbor.
It got a little...
We may need to post 2 meetings in September on that, one specifically dedicated to regulations.
Let's do that. I mean, how long will you think it'll take?
Well, the way it works, we'll do the 3 weeks in the newspaper.
No, but how long would the meeting take?
Oh, approximately an hour and a half.
Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, let's do 2 meetings.
Mm-hmm. It depends on how many people show up to that meeting. We all know how some of our hearings can go. We can have 30 people in here arguing about their dogs and horses,
right,
or we can have one person here asking a single question about the Hummock Pond watershed.
Right.
So
and just kind of lay it all out.
Exactly. I'll start working on creating the charts.
That was
flow charts.
It was very educational to me.
Mm-hmm.
The other issue I have is our next scheduled meeting is for August 18th, and I can't be here on August 18th. Okay. And we could let the vice chair manage it, or you could change the meeting, whatever you want. You let the vice chair do it.
We can
or you
let
want
the
to change
vice chair.
the meeting.
Changing the meeting in August would be a little difficult.
Let's just leave it. I'll just let you know I will not be here on August.
Okay.
18th.
Sounds good.
I'm sure you can all handle it.
All right.
We did postpone something to August today.
The Hummock Pond Association is looking to reapply for their aggregation plans, separating to what happened.
Yeah, we put that off, and today we tabled something today.
Oh, today we tabled Weinman to September.
Yes,
that was the only one that got
come
tabled.
back with her to find out if she's still in compliance or not.
Exactly, and then we tabled to August the trailer for 9 Kimball Avenue, pending the conversation with engineering to connect to the current or to the septic system that they're going to be implying.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Good to go.
Nope. Then, if I hear no objections, we will close the meeting.